My father didn't just disinherit me, he erased me. He sat in his leather wing-back chair, looked me dead in the eye, and signed a document that turned 30 years of "I love you, son" into a legal zero. He left everything, the estate, the archives, the family legacy, to a man he'd known for exactly 6 months, a spiritual advisor named Julian. But as I stood in the rain outside the gates of the only home I'd ever known, I wasn't crying. I was smiling, because Julian made one fatal mistake during the buyout. He let me take one box from the attic. He thought it was just old journals and broken glass. He didn't realize that in my family, the most dangerous things aren't kept in the bank vault. They're kept in the dust. If this story gives you chills and that sweet taste of justice, smash that like button right now, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another epic payback. Drop your own revenge story or the one you wish happened in the comments below. I read every single one. Now let's get into the blood and the ink. My father, Elias Thorne, was a man of precision. He was a master horologist, a clockmaker for the elite. He understood time, but he never understood people. When my mother passed, the gears in his head seemed to slip. That's when Julian arrived. Julian wasn't a Karen or a thug. He was a predator of the soul. He wore linen suits, smelled like sandalwood, and spoke in a voice like warm honey. Within weeks he had convinced my father that I was too grounded in the material world to inherit the Thorne legacy. The day the will was read was cold. Julian sat across from me, sipping tea from my mother's favorite porcelain cup. Elias wanted his transition to be unburdened by earthly attachments, Leo, Julian whispered, his eyes gleaming with a victory he couldn't quite hide. I was stripped of my name, my home, and my future. But I knew something Julian didn't. My father's genius wasn't just in clocks. It was a secret. I asked for one thing. The box in the north gable, the one marked broken glass. Julian laughed. A soft, pitying sound. Taka, you are trash. Leo, I have the gold. I took the box. I moved into a cramped studio apartment that smelled of old grease and cheap cigarettes. For 3 weeks, I didn't sleep. I spread the contents of that box across the floor. It wasn't just glass. It was a collection of specialized lenses, mirrors, and silverback plates, the components of a Chronos box, a theoretical device my father had obsessed over. But it wasn't a time machine. It was a projector. And the film was hidden in the very texture of the family estate's wallpaper. You see, my father was paranoid. He didn't trust banks, and he certainly didn't trust spiritual advisors. He had spent the last year of his life pretending to succumb to Julian's influence while secretly documenting every single interaction. But he didn't use a camera. Julian checked for those. He used a technique called Optic Resonance. By treating the walls of his study with a specific chemical compound, the mirrors in the room acted as a passive recording device, burning images into the silver nitrate backing of the mirrors when exposed to a specific frequency of light. I had the light source in my box. I spent the next month playing the part of the defeated son. I took a job as a janitor at a local library. I let Julian see me looking disheveled and broken when he passed me in his new Mercedes, my Mercedes. "Poor Leo," he'd say, tossing a coin toward me. Still stuck in the gears of the past. Meanwhile, I was building a masterpiece. I wasn't just going to take my money back. I was going to dismantle Julian's entire identity. Julian wasn't just a con man, he was a guru to the city's wealthiest, most vulnerable widows. He was planning a healing retreat at the Thorne Estate Gala, where he would solicit millions in donations to build a temple. I knew the layout of the house better than the back of my hand. I knew that the ventilation system in the grand ballroom had a bypass in the cellar. And I knew that Julian had invited the district attorney, the chief of police, and the city's elite to his big reveal. The night before the gala, I didn't break in. I used the key my father had hidden inside the broken glass box, a key disguised as a shard of sapphire. I crept through the shadows of my childhood home. The smell of sandalwood was everywhere. It felt like a violation. I set up the lenses. I calibrated the silver plates. I aimed the projectors at the high white walls of the ballroom. I wasn't looking for a confession of theft. I found something much, much worse. The gala was a sea of black ties and silk gowns. Julian stood on the podium, bathed in a soft spotlight. "We are here to honor the memory of Elias Thorne," Julian projected, his voice echoing with false humility. "A man who found peace in his final days by letting go of his worldly burdens." I was in the basement, my hand on the master switch. I watched through a hidden peephole. "I have a vision," Julian continued. "A vision of a world without greed." "Let's look at your vision, Julian," I whispered. I flipped the switch. The lights in the ballroom didn't go out. They shifted. The frequency changed to a deep ultraviolet hue. Suddenly, the walls, the beautiful cream-colored walls, began to shimmer. The optic resonance plates began to project. It wasn't a movie. It was like ghosts dancing on the plaster. The images were grainy, but undeniable. The room gasped as they saw a projection of Julian, 6 months prior, standing over my father's bed. But he wasn't praying. The projection showed Julian holding a small vial, a slow-acting paralytic my father had been allergic to. It showed Julian leaning down, his face twisted in a sneer, whispering into my father's ear, "Hurry up and die, you old fool. Your son is a loser, and your money is mine." The room went deathly silent. Julian froze. He turned to the wall, his face turning the color of ash. "It's a trick," he shrieked. "A digital fabrication." But then the next projection hit. It was Julian in the study, talking to a man the district attorney recognized instantly, a notorious money launderer. They were discussing how to liquefy the Thorne archives and ship the historical artifacts overseas. The masterpiece, however, was the sound. I had rigged the clock chimes to vibrate at the exact frequency of the recorded audio. My father's voice, thin and raspy, filled the room. "You think you've won, Julian? You forgot I'm a clockmaker. I know exactly when you'll fail." The spiritual advisor tried to run, but the chief of police was already at the doors. Julian didn't just lose the inheritance, because the optic resonance was a chemical process embedded in the house itself. It counted as physical evidence of premeditated murder and fraud. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked at me. I was standing in the doorway of the study, holding the last shard of glass from my father's box. "How?" he wheezed. "How did you know?" "My father didn't leave me the money because he knew you'd steal it," I said, my voice cold and steady. "He left me the attic because he knew I was the only one smart enough to use it." I watched them put him in the back of a cruiser. He didn't look like a guru anymore. He looked like a small, terrified rat caught in a very large, very complex set of gears. The will was contested and overturned within 48 hours. I returned to the estate, but I didn't keep it. I sold the house, donated the archives to a museum, and kept only one thing, my father's workbench. The revenge wasn't just about the money. It was about proving that Julian's spiritual lies were no match for my father's mechanical truths. Sometimes, justice isn't a hammer. It's a clock. It ticks away in the dark, silent and patient, waiting for the exact second to strike. My father lost his life, but he saved his legacy by trusting the one person everyone else had dismissed. I learned that the things people throw away, the broken glass of our lives, often hold the most light. If this story gives you chills and that sweet taste of justice, smash that like button right now, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another epic payback.